Breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. Breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. Now let's do this with the eyes closed. Breathing in and breathing out. Nice. Breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth. Breathe in. This time lengthen the breath. See if you can lengthen it, deepen it just a little bit and whoosh out. And we continue to keep our eyes closed. With each breath, as we lengthen, as we deepen, we're taking the nervous system into a calmer state, consciously. The breath anyway happens unconsciously, and here the beauty is we bring awareness to it consciously, and therefore impact our emotional states. Now gently open the eyes, and we'll do another breath called the hissing breath or the Bhujangini Pranayama. This again can be practiced anytime. We're breathing in through the nose and out through the teeth. So this is extremely good for the liver, for pitta. You know, all Indian grandmothers will tell you, summer don't eat this, pitta madhigamaidum, you'll have boils, you'll have this, you'll have skin rashes. So interesting, the liver is connected to the skin, it's connected to the eyes. So if you have eye issues, if you have anger issues, if you have, any sort of, like rashes or itching, all of that is to do with accumulation of pitta in the system, which is fire and water. Combination is pitta and Ayurveda. So how do we release that inbuilt pitta? By doing the hissing breath. So it's quite cooling. The previous breath was slightly warming. Bhastrika is bellows, so we're stoking the fire. This breath is cooling. So summer, the Bhujangini breath is the best to practice. And of course, if you're having heated conversation, take a moment, do the Bhujangini, you'll cool off, and then you can come back. So we're going to breathe in through the nose and hiss out through the teeth like a little cobra that is hissing out. So let's breathe in and hiss out. Breathe in and hiss out through the teeth. Breathe in, hiss out. Wonderful. We'll do 3 more rounds in a bit, but I'm reminded of a story of this cobra, very spiritual cobra that used to listen to lectures in a little village. So in those days, the guru will go from village to village, giving lectures and giving satsangs. And there was this guru who came to that particular village. He's been there many times, and then that time when he came, he sees a snake very battered and not looking very good. And he looks at the female cobra and he says, "Oh, I recognize you. You were there in my last satsang. What happened to you? You looked healthy. Then now you look really battered." And then the cobra said, "Guruji, I was so inspired by your talk. You gave the talk on ahimsa, and I thought I'm going to practice it fully. And therefore, I decided, that's going to be my tapas." So the village kids came. As kids are, they get curious if that snake is lying. So they poked the kid with a stick. The cobra said, "No, I'm not going to do anything." And then, they went closer, still poked it. It still didn't, budge. Then they picked it up in their hands, started twirling around, throwing it, hitting it on the tree, and this poor, cobra got battered. And so the Guruji looked at the cobra and said, yeah, I told you not to bite, but I did not tell you not to hiss. So sometimes we need to hiss to set our boundaries. We need to hiss to communicate. We need to hiss. I mean, we don't have to be aggressive, but we need to assert certain things that are hurting us and communicate to the other person that this is not okay. So the lesson of the female cobra, the Bhujangini, also comes to us through this breath. The awareness and the wisdom of this cobra also comes to us through this breath. So let's do it just 3 more times. And this time with the eyes closed, breathing in. And holding the spirit of this female cobra, hissing out. Once again, breathing in. Where I'm balanced, I'm not aggressive but assertive. It's a nice cooling breath, good for summer. Breathe in. And hiss out. Through the teeth. So breathing in through the nose, breathing out through the teeth. And take a moment here and just be present to how your body is feeling. So as we awaken to the intelligence of the body, we'll just, if you want to continue, you can continue. It's a nice breath to keep practicing whenever you have time. So we're awakening to the intelligence of the body. We're awakening to the intelligence of the breath. We're awakening to the intelligence of prana or life force. And we learn one last practice to awaken to the intelligence of the life force, our life force. Maybe I'll invite Ross up here. He's from my organization, Arkaya Foundation in Canada. He's one of the directors and he's been studying with me for the last 10 years. Yeah, with a chair, please. And he can demonstrate the Jyoti Kriya. So this is the last practice we're going to learn. And like I said, all of these can be done about 2 to 3 minutes during the day. The camera line, yeah. So we're going to start with placing our palms in the Jyoti Mudra. Jyoti is inner illumination. Jyoti is also light. And a mudra is an energetic or a mystic seal. So it seals and moves energy in a particular pathway. So we'll keep our eyes closed just for a moment, tune into this Jyoti Mudra. Now gently open your fingers out about maybe an inch. Gently bring it back together. Touching very lightly, gently opening it out. So we saw we're awakening to our multi-dimensional nature, the body, the breath, our emotions, our pranic energy. Gently bring it back. Our minds and our cosmic fields. We're awakening to all that we are, to the magnificence that we are. Now gently bring it back together and just keep them touching for a while, awakening this inner illumination or Jyoti. And as we awaken to this, we're able to see which areas are out of alignment and bring them back into alignment. We saw how the mind can sometimes be a slave driver. And so we bring the mind back to balance so the body can be in joy, be in harmony. And there's alignment between all these fields of our existence. That is the physical, emotional, mental, energetic. and cosmic. And we start creating win-win-win solutions when we are aligned. You may say, what, win-win. But what is the third win? So win-win is a very popular management concept where two people get into something which is beneficial for both. Both are profited, both do well. But in the yogic sense, the third win is where it's also for the greater good of all. There can be two corrupt people who benefit from a deal, but without the third win, it's not a yogic win. And that's what the alignment creates. When we're truly aligned, we automatically are built to create win-win-win solutions, win-win-win situations, win-win-win deals. And that uplifts everyone. That is something that happens effortlessly for us to arise. Now gently open the eyes. And now let's do the Jyoti Kriya. I'll ask Ross to demonstrate. So breathing in, we create arms like angel wings going all the way up, and it goes all the way up and behind. So we're not only having this thing, imagine you're holding a ball of light behind you. See if you can take your arm behind as well. And breathing out, bring it gently down. Beautiful. And let your forearms rest on your thighs. So we'll do this again. Breathe in, and then we'll close the eyes and do this. Going all the way up, and your palms are facing each other like you're holding a ball of light, and breathing out, gently release. We'll use the Sukha Bhastrika, breathing in through the nose. Beautiful, everybody's getting it. All the way up and behind, and breathing out. Beautiful. And then let's keep the eyes closed for a moment. And just be aware of how your body is feeling. What are the sensations? Now gently move your fingers a little apart. Gently bring them together. Gently move it apart, just an inch or two. And gently bring it together. One last time. Gently bring it apart. And now just see if you sense any sensation between your palms and fingers. Now gently rub your palms. Place them on the eye, soothing the eye. And gently relax the palms back to your center. So as you were moving your palms and fingers, did you feel anything between your palms and fingers? If you didn't feel anything, that's fine too. It's like an electricity. That's wonderful. Any other thoughts? Tingling sensation. So that's how we feel prana. Like electricity, like a tingling sensation, like magnetism. So you said electricity, tingling, magnetism. Sometimes you can feel it as heat. Sometimes you can feel it as cooling. So it's wonderful that some of you were able to feel it. Like I said, this is just a appetizer where you know that, yes, I have the capacity to increase the prana in my system. And this prana is like exactly like electricity. You can use it to cool a room. You can use it to heat a room. You can use it to heal. You can use it to create movement within the body if there's some stagnation. You can shift things. If there's excessive pitta, you can shift it. So all of this prana is beautiful as a healing tool in your system. And like I said, it takes time and, it takes practice for you to start feeling it. But some of you already have felt it a lot. I'm just having my eye on the time. So I think the last 10 minutes was, oh, the questions are already there. Oh, there. Fantastic. What are the early signs that we are misaligned from our inner values or purpose? The emotions and the body are a great indicator. The body never lies. With the mind, we can go into flights of fantasy. We can say, oh, I'm meditating, I'm this great yogi. But with the body, we can't lie. We can either touch our toes or we can't touch our toes. So let's say the body is falling apart, or the emotions, let's say you're feeling depressed, you're feeling repressed, you're feeling unhappy. That is a great sign. In Swami Geetananda's ashram, there's a sign that says he didn't take everybody as a student. It's not like a general open ashram. It's more like a Gurukula. So you have to commit at least for 6 months where you go and you study, wake up at 4 o'clock, and there's a set schedule. So there's a sign saying, do not enter if you're not happy. That was the baseline, So like I said, yoga is for everybody. Even if, you're feeling terrible or miserable, it works. But that is an indicator. When you're not feeling at your optimum, when you're not feeling joyous, then it is a sure sign that either we're repressing emotions or we are staying in an unhealthy environment and not doing anything about it. The environment could be created by us or it could be created by others. And yoga is very actionable. I was mentioning how this karuna is very actionable compassion. It's not compassion where we just say, oh, I feel bad for this. We do things to shift things. That's where the practical mysticism comes. So that is one of the sure signs. Can you share a personal turning point in your own inner journey that shaped your outer success? That's a great question. So there are, I would say, a few turning points, but one major turning point was when I was younger. I studied advertising and filmmaking in university, and that's the world I was in. But I was also a yoga teacher, certified yoga teacher by then, and my grandfather was my first guru. So though I was on this quest, I'm talking about 33 years ago, time flies, when I was in university. And, at that point, I was a high achiever in university and also while working, but my values were not aligned. And I was too young to understand that my values were not aligned. So one of my gurus called me and said, oh, so what do you do? And I said, yeah, this is what I do, Swamiji. And he's like, here's this book on subliminal advertising, I read it and he's like, so this is what you're doing. You're brainwashing millions of people into buying products that are really terrible for them. I was like, whoa, okay. So that was a big turning point for me where I had invested many years in it. By then I'd set up my own ad production house, and I enjoyed the craft of it, but the messaging. So I decided to give it up. Within a year, I gave it up and I went into the next ashram and saying, I'm going to rededicate my life. There's a lot I still don't understand, So that was a major turning point. And I would never change anything about it because I found Ammaji. At that point, I wanted to study Tantra and I wanted a female guru again because my mother was scared and, all those things. So finding Amma Meenakshi Amma was the biggest blessing. And that happened because I, shifted gears, went in a different direction. So yeah, thank you for that question. Is it possible to start being religious? And how does that impact our inner environment? Wonderful question. I'm not at all a religious person. My mother's Brahmin and my dad's a Christian. So, I just go into either role to please either parent. And that's what I learned when I was young. But spirituality is without boundaries and it connects us on a very human level. And I've seen the perils of not religiousness but fanaticism. And we're all seeing that now in our country, where anything, to its extreme is, I would say, it's not just neutral, it's very detrimental to humanity, detrimental to us. And spirituality is the opposite. It opens our hearts to and minds to what's going on, not just on a micro level, but on a macro level. So I think each one of us should tap into our spirituality and not the religiousness. Yes, the religion is part of how these systems are in place. And my guru used to say that, yoga will make a Hindu a better Hindu, which means a more expansive Hindu, a Christian a better Christian, and a manager a better manager. And a thief a better thief, if not practiced with consciousness. So here is this weak person, and then you make him strong with the yoga practices, give him a focused mind. And if he's not conscious, then he can use those skills to again plunder and do bad to humanity. So that's important. Does each individual have to play according to their own karma? How to erase or overcome the karma? Okay, that's a big topic. I'm just looking at the time. There are different kinds of karma, prarabdha karma and different karmas, but I'll simplify it. So if you're looking at karma, there's also the karma of our bodies, the collective karma, the karma of our families we're born into. And how do we navigate all that in a simple way is the question. So again, through Karuna Sakshi Bhava, we can say we're born with certain bodily karmas, which means we may have a genetic history of diabetes in the family. Then, we are aware of that, but we use that wisdom or that knowledge in a good way to work with the information we have. And of course, we start, getting healthy at a earlier stage. So this capacity to observe ourselves, to see what is it that we need to shift for the better in our own lives, physically, emotionally, mentally, is going to change the karma in that moment. And changing that karma in the present, step by step, is going to impact us in future. So in a very simplified way, I'll say that every action of our thought, of our hands, of our words has an impact. And the more sensitized we become, the more we apply Karuna Sakshi Bhava, we start seeing the impact of others on us, the impact of us on others. And again, we were having this conversation, and the idea is that the yogis, when you're actually very, very subtle, then without saying a word, you can impact others just by your pranic field, just through silence, because of how pure all these emotional cobwebs are no more in your space. And therefore, because of this pure pranic field, your impact will also be in the positive direction. Otherwise, if you have all these emotional cobwebs, I'm using very simple terms so that you can understand, which means, all that gunk, which has been the debris of past hurts and pain, which is hanging around in your emotional field, that will also impact others. So this cleansing or this clearing or whatever word you want to say, this purification, this pranic bath that we have is very, very important to shift our karma, but also to shift the karma of our loved ones, and we can impact all of humanity as well. Whenever I suffer with body pain or any mental agitation, I meditate and use to calm myself, as I am not the body. I am the soul, Atma, and forget my body and related feelings. Am I correct? You are correct, and sometimes there can also be spiritual bypassing. So what is bypassing? Sometimes instead of actually seeing things for what they are, we use spirituality as an escape. I am not my body. Sometimes the body has needs, and we need to acknowledge those needs. And that's why I love practical mysticism, where we say, okay, yeah, I'm not my body, and yet the body is like a child that has to be given care, that has to be, given respect, that has to be taken care of. So both, you are right, and I don't know which person asked that question. There was no name. So you are right on that, but I would say be present to the body, take care of it and nurture it as a child. And if you have pains in the body, think about why those pains are there. Is your posture off? I was saying whenever we see pain, pain is an indicator for change, for positive change. So invoke consciousness and say, what am I unconscious about? Is it my posture? Is it my eating habits? Is it my stress levels? And if you can change that and then nothing happens, then say, okay, now I'm not my body. But first step is acknowledging the body, recognizing the body. That is very, very important. Don't use spirituality as an escape from the body. What advice would you give to someone feeling burnt out or disconnected from their purpose? Again, great question. So the degree of burnout, the degree of disconnection is also important. But again, when I have somebody in the yogic healing sessions, we look at it and say, okay, so, where did this start? But to give you an overview, I'll say if you're burnt out, obviously the body has been pushed to its maximum. And, the adrenaline and cortisol is very, very, very high in the system. And therefore, there's a crash. So the first thing is, again, going step by step, regulating sleep. So if you're burnt out, your sleep patterns will be very dysregulated. Again, checking if your bowel movements are proper, is your digestion proper. And again, we have this gut-brain connection. Again, this is the genius of the rishis, or the ancient researchers, where they tell us that we can re-regulate the nervous system. And a simple practice like the Brahmari, the breathing in and breathing out with a that increases your nitric oxide levels by about 15%, just 1 or 2 breaths. So imagine if you just did 3 minutes of that. And what it does is it resets the nervous system into the parasympathetic. Otherwise, we're in the sympathetic, always in this fight, flight, freeze mode. So for the burnout, I would ask you to check all these factors, your lifestyle, your emotional patterns, your mental patterns, your energetic patterns, and see how you can shift them for the better. I'm giving all quick 2-minute answers. These are all long ones. How can we integrate mindfulness into our daily work routines without making it feel like another task? That's a great question. So it can happen right through the day. Like I said, when I teach, it's not just a 1-hour class. You're waiting in line for something to happen, then do some of the hissing breaths. Or let's say you are wanting to take a decision, then you can do this Jnana Mudra, you can do the Jyoti Kriya, and say, I want to be aligned with the highest as I take this decision. So every moment can become a reason to awaken, to align, and use that energy to uplift ourselves. And for me, constantly, it's not, despite life circumstances, that can happen. We were at an Ayurvedic center and we were quite disappointed. So, what unfolded, Hema knows the story, And then that was our biggest test, where we've come all the way from Canada. There's Ross, myself, my brother, and my mom. And we were like, okay, we'll just do the practice and use this as a time to kind of realign and, regroup together. And life happens. We're not going to have smooth sailing all the time. We're not going to be burnt out. Sometimes we push ourselves, and then we can regroup, we can understand, we can come back to groundedness, we can come back to center without going into reactiveness and self-loathing. A lot of us go into that mode. So I think that's done. Fantastic. Thank you everyone for being such a great audience.